Welcome to the Listening Well, the space where every story matters. I'm Shania, your host and therapist, here to share real conversations and anonymous letters from listeners who are ready to speak their truth or just share something that they want to tell. Some stories are spoken, some are written, all are worth hearing. Let's listen in. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and into another story. We are here with a new guest today. We're here with Claire. And Claire, I would love for you to share a bit about yourself and also what drew you to reach out to join the pod today.
So I'm Claire, and here's my bio. I'm a cultivator of hope and a joy releaser. I went to Asbury Theological Seminary, graduating with a master's in biblical studies. I'm a certified belief trainer from Steve Backlund, Igniting Hope Ministry, also a graduate of his first-year leadership academy. I am a success principle trainer with Jack Canfield. I had an encounter with Jesus back in 2015, and it radically changed my life. And I've never been the same.
Okay.
So, that's who I am.
Well, you're really decorated with a lot of different accolades. That's really amazing. So I would love to get into what you would like to share with us on the pod today.
Yeah, so what we reached out, it was because I didn't speak English or any language until I was about 4, which, was tricky because your sister's doing all kinds of stuff and you're not. And, and I just remember learning how to talk, and Mom was always like, yeah, you didn't talk. You just didn't talk. And so it's really funny because what has God thrown me into? Public speaking. All over the place, right? I mean, I had undiagnosed learning disability until I was in seminary when I went and got a clinical diagnosis from a psychologist. Because I was struggling academically.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Well, it was the 80s and the 90s, and they were just, I'm sure that they just thought I wasn't trying harder. But I was actually dyslexic, for starters. And reading was never easy. I'm so glad I discovered audiobooks. Yeah, my first audiobook was the Bible, and I just took off with it. And yeah, on cassettes of all things. So you got one cassette and doing chores, and you had to listen to that cassette until it was done. And then if you weren't done with it chores, you just flipped it over and listened to it again, It was very limiting compared to today's technology where I'm like, I have like 8,000 books on my phone.
Yes, unlimited. Unlimited options probably for like forever.
Yeah, every time I upgrade my phone, it immediately on Audible throws me into the highest level of books owned because
they're like, you've got space.
Yeah. I love audiobooks. I love learning. I love net time, no extra time learning. And I've learned so much because of that.
Okay. So since receiving, and if this is something you're comfortable sharing with, since receiving your diagnosis, how has that been for you? Were you able to find any tools and different things to be able to help you kind of along the way?
Yeah, transcribing is one of the tools I use these days. And it didn't exist back in 99 when I was diagnosed. But I'm like, man, the things I do now for class is because, you have somebody and they're talking to you and you're like, what did they just say? And you're trying to write stuff down. And so I love it. I transcribe on my iPad. And every class, I'm just recording the transcription, all of my notes with people. I'm doing that. And then I go back and delete them so that, for confidentiality. But, it's all this stuff that I use to help me see and hear and not have to worry about the spelling because I'm not a great speller. I still am like, why is it I before E except after C and in cases of
there's so many caveats.
Ridiculous other times.
The English language is just really finicky for sure.
My goodness. So I'm like, oh, it's there. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I use all kinds of tools like grammatically. That and I are starting to learn each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
Yeah,
great.
but it's what's amazing is, and I tell people this all the time, because one of the things that I learned, I think Dean mentioned it first, and when I realized it, I was like, oh yeah, that's it exactly. Finding out where a kid's grace is.
Mm,
Like, I mean, I've had two students that I've worked with. One, cows. If people had had him reading cow books, he would not have been in the lowest reading group
yeah,
because you could blow that stuff away. He'll read magazines. He used to sit down in our kitchen and read my dad's a lot of big words in there that he couldn't understand, but he was still working through the process of reading it.
right,
It was, but that was his grace. Where if they had taken math and they had taken everything else and put it into his grace area, kid would have been off the charts. For me, it's Bible. For another one of the kids I worked with, I actually worked with this kid. This was geography. And
okay,
it's like, we don't take enough time to really get to know the kids we're teaching, to understand their grace, and then gear their tough learning stuff towards that so then you can come back around and teach the stuff they need to know.
right. Strengths first, interests first, it sounds like. Can you describe a little bit about what grace means to you in that context?
The grace for me is the operational force. It's the So when I say grace, I'm talking about the operational force. It's that niche that they really want to learn about. Like, I
Yeah,
laugh. Some people are like, "My son's all about ladybugs right now," and I was like, "Great! What are you teaching him about math, science, and other stuff with the ladybug?" And they're like,
right.
"Huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, read books on it. Do everything on that. Let
Mm-hmm.
him extend that grace again, till it peters out and he's on to something else."
Yeah,
I'm not meaning spend thousands of dollars on it. You don't need to get him like a ladybug farm and all this stuff, but you can find all kinds of stuff online that you could make and learn and make a curriculum for a kid like that and then go back around and learn all the stuff.
right. Yeah. I wonder if that's like the hard part about, in school settings, like when you're in public school settings or just in person, I should say, where like things aren't really individualized. So if someone shows any difficulty, it's like, oh, you're not getting this. Maybe for them, it's like, well, if you present it to me like in a way that makes sense that I'm interested in, then I might have a easier job of getting that grasp by you meeting me where I'm at.
Mhm.
Where like the
Yeah.
students always have to meet the teacher, meet the curriculum where it's at.
Yeah, and that's where, homeschooling, there's a little more grace, and I
Hmm.
mean, just favor and all of that on it because you could teach to their strengths and then circle back around and make sure they have all the skills that they need. Whereas
Right.
in school, you know, you have 18 kids in your classroom and six are other interest learning. And it's a little tricky for one teacher
Yeah.
to hit all those marks. So I get it,
Hmm.
but when they have an individual aid, I'm like, why aren't you teaching them the stuff that is their real grace?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Looking back on your childhood, was there anything that you would pinpoint to have been your grace in that time?
I think outside and farming was definitely one of my early graces. And
Okay.
then once I got into high school and realized that and what was hilariously funny is the first time I read my Bible was I was a devout atheist trying to prove that it didn't say what it said about God.
Okay.
And I wound up listening to it too, I think 3, 4 times. And I finally was like, okay, I think this God guy actually might exist. And moved in from there. And it was amazing. I was blowing 50-year-olds away. They were like, how do you know this? You're 15. How do I know this?
Wow.
I just heard it. I learned I was an audio visual learner. So,
Hmm.
you sit down with the thing and it's reading to you, the NIV, and suddenly it's just locked in there. I have to laugh because it's like I still remember stuff written on the boards of teachers and making it real. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing a bit of that with me. Is there any particular story from your journey throughout life that you would like to shed some light and highlight here that could be helpful for other listeners that are out there?
Yeah, I think for me, there is these encounter moments where, like for me, my life was changed on a conference room floor, and I had the vision moment. And that for me changed me. And then God sent me on a journey to learn my true identity. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm now more comfortable sharing with people because I know who I am. And
Right.
so much, I think, right now, we're told by our parents who we are, we're told by our teachers who we are, we're told by our coach who we are, we're told by this, and then we get out into the world and we're like, nobody's telling me who I am anymore, and I
Right.
don't
Right.
know
Right.
who I am,
Yeah.
right? We're not doing really great on the autonomy that is, okay, yeah, you tell a kid who they are, you tell them, and a coach wants you to do certain things, but then when they become 18 or 24 or whenever they graduate from school, now all of a sudden there's nobody telling them what they are, who they
Right.
are, and they're getting a job and all of this. So, I mean, learning who you are, again, part of it is your unique grace.
Mm-hmm.
You may have a place where you really want to thrive in. Can you make it work? Sometimes yes, sometimes no as a business, but I think we don't give people a lot of chance because we're like, "Oh, you're never going to make it with that kind of a talent." Well, tell that
There's
to
a lot of
people who
doubt.
are brilliant that they might, but we immediately discourage them and try to keep them in a safe bubble. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you know who you are, you know you're not designed for the traditional 9 to 5 or
Yeah.
this, and finding your grace. Again, I like to use that word because it's just an operational force, right? And finding that inside you and then making that your passion, but
Mm-hmm.
you gotta have a lot of confidence in it.
That's true. What did that process look like for you? Like finding your sense of self, being able to lean into your grace and allowing that to be a thing, like as an adult too. Cause I could see where, like, maybe as a kid, they're like, oh, yeah, like have your interests and be in the things that you're interested in. But as you start to get older and it's about being independent and making money, then they're like, okay, like you got to be realistic now. Like you got to get
Hmm.
like a real job. So what did that look like for you?
Well, and I'm all for, the idea of getting a real job, but I'm also for there's possible, I mean, Jim Rohn talks about work more on yourself than you do on your business, right? Work more on you. And when you start working on you, you begin to realize there are ways I can tap into what I'm uniquely created for.
Yeah.
And sadly, I think, the church world that I live in told me I couldn't do what I was called to do
Okay.
because, well, some of it was gender related, some of it is,
Mhm.
just because of various things. There's no room for learning
Mhm.
in certain environments, and the church
Right.
sadly is one of them. You try something and you fall flat on your face. Well, that's great. So did the disciples with Jesus, but they're not seeing that,
Mhm.
and it's like, so we have to have places where we can learn and fail, and I think that's one of those areas where it just in general we're not super great with the fact that learning is learning and failing.
Right.
And think about a child learning to walk. If as an adult we would be like, they try to take one step and what do? They're down,
Mhm.
right?
And we're
One
excited
step
anyway.
and we're all excited. But if you try to do that in your unique grace that God has given you and you fail, there's nobody cheering you. Most people are like, see, it wasn't your grace.
Right.
Well, there's nowhere in scripture where it's like, if it's your unique grace, it's gonna be easy.
Mhm.
No, it's gonna be easier, but it doesn't mean it's gonna be like I can suddenly teach at a high level.
Mhm.
No, you have to try, fail, try again, fail. That's why I like it's learning. You're either succeeding or you're learning.
Right, to become better in some kind of way, but giving yourself the space to do that. I feel like that's a theme that's coming up a bit more often now. Like people talking
Hmm.
about, like trying something new without the intentions of being great at it, like just to do something new because you might end up liking it. And if you do, maybe do it to just enjoy it. It doesn't have to be something that's like monetized. And if it is, I heard this quote recently. It was like try something. How did it go? It was like if you do something bad enough at times, it'll become good, and then your good becomes better, and then your better becomes the best. And I feel like that's a really great foundation for that. Like you have to go through being bad to be able to get there because not everyone's just like gifted in whatever their grace is and they're just, coming out the bat perfect. But even that person, I'm sure, feel whatever they're producing is not good enough, even if it might be perfect to somebody else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you said yourself, you're kind of new to the podcasting industry, right?
Hmm.
And you're learning. Your first podcast was not your best podcast,
It
but
was
this
not.
podcast is better. This podcast was better than your first podcast.
It is so
And
far, so far.
when you start celebrating that success, that
Hmm.
learning, that, whoa, okay, that didn't take as long,
Yeah.
and you start celebrating that stuff, now you've got momentum to keep moving forward, number one, but also to kind of keep learning, keep doing. I mean, who
Hmm.
wants to do something that people are like, it was horrible, don't do it again, and that's what that silly inner critic is always telling us, and other people may be like, you were fine,
Hmm.
you know I mean, my life when I first started doing lives on Facebook for 30-ish minutes, I mean, I didn't have a green screen. I didn't even have the high def camera or the studio lights, I just
Hmm.
showed up, the light behind me looked horrible. One of the first things I bought was a ring light.
You
Then
should
my
see my
camera
set.
went wonky. And I was like, "Oh, what's going on? I gotta buy a camera." And then I got a green screen, so I stopped having to take the door down, and then I got the green screen positioned correctly, and
Mhm.
all the stuff that if I looked back 20 or 5 years ago when I first started, I would look back and go like, "But I started,
Right.
and
And you
here I
kept going.
am." And I keep showing up for these podcasts because I love just sharing what I know with
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
you know? And I was on one yesterday and I was showing her, I took down my screen, the virtual background screen stuff, and I showed her all around my studio because
Hmm.
her lighting was bad, and her digital imagery was cutting in and out a little
Yeah,
bit,
mine
and
does
I
that
was
all the
like,
time.
get a green screen. Well,
Yeah.
part of it is you don't have a green screen. Part of it
Hmm.
is, yeah, I did try to have a virtual background, and I was like, I know I don't like the disembodied weird
Yeah.
glow
Sometimes
around my head, and I was like, and I'm going back to green, right? But it's some of this stuff that if I figured out the right settings, it probably would work just fine. But it's that learning curve and continuing to just
right.
push into stuff and having a whole lot of fun on podcasts, sharing my story and sharing the radical change in me. Because
Hmm.
I sometimes will be like, anybody want the jerk that was here 5 years ago back? No. I'm like, neither do I. Like they would say, yes, absolutely, we'd love the jerk that you used to be back. No, and that's my joke. But it's the learning. It's the
Yeah.
freedom. And a lot of it is, sadly, it's a belief.
Hmm.
If you just believe that you just keep trying. None of us learn to walk. None of us learn to ride our bike, shoot a basketball, do all the stuff that we do now, play pickleball, play tennis. None of that was one and boom, we were awesome at it. You
Right.
know? It was
Yeah.
practice.
Can you share a little bit about what folks could potentially find by joining your Facebook Live?
Well, I'm working on identity in Christ
Okay.
because, as I said earlier, so many people give us who they think we are,
Mm-hmm.
but inside, God has actually given us identity, both as a much loved child. I mean, that's like our first identity is loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about that one for a while. I'm currently talking about legacy, but there's so
Okay.
much on my feed about that identity in Christ. In fact, I'm working on a course for part of my Backland Leadership Part 2. I did Part 1. My first part was infinitely loved, a whole month on love,
Wow.
because most people don't know how to receive love
Mm-hmm.
or give love.
Right. Very
And
true.
First John 4:19 says, "We love because he first loved us."
Mm-hmm.
And so I started with love, and now I'm getting into some more, because one of the things that changed me radically was I stopped dragging my dead old nature up. I don't know if you're a believer or not, but old dead nature up, and realized that 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "I am a new creation."
Mm-hmm.
A new creation that didn't start when I get to heaven. I'm a new creation, which is so much of these promises are pushed off towards then.
Right. That's a good point.
They're real now. You're a new
Mm-hmm. Be
creation
that person
now.
today.
It says
Mm-hmm.
you've been circumcised of the old nature, meaning Jesus got in there and cut it away and said, "It's done. The last vestiges of the old nature are right here."
Mm-hmm.
Mostly right here, but they're right here on the right side of your brain where all the pictures are, and your subconscious, your
Mm-hmm.
belief systems. It's where passages like Romans 12:2, renew your mind. What are you renewing your mind to? Well, Philippians 4:9, 8, and 9 are really great ideas. Like what's excellent, what God has done, the testimony, who you are, what your new nature is.
Yeah.
Because literally, we've been taught to drag that up, and God is sitting there going, "Yeah, I did it again, God." And he's like, "Did what?" "This. I see nothing." I mean, that's what he's saying in the spirit realm, but most of us are like, "Ah," and he's just like, "Can we move forward?" Because repentance is actually too repenting to what he says about you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is that changed me. That's where I talk about, you guys want the 5 years ago when I was still a jerk. Yeah, it's like this is what's changed me, is I've stopped repenting of my old nature that's
Mm-hmm.
dead to my new nature that's alive, and I've
Yeah.
changed. I hear one testimony. I had this student who had an anger problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? And bit his cousin, punched his cousin. 2 different weeks, but still I'm looking at it, I'm going, God, we gotta have a strategy here,
Yeah.
because this kid's gonna get me fired because I can't control him. And the Lord says to me, he says, he didn't have an anger problem. I'm like, I don't know what classroom you're in. May I remind you, he bit and punched his cousin. And he goes, nope, he didn't have an anger problem. And I said, and this is when I'm beginning to get this lesson in my head. And he goes, no, he doesn't have an anger problem. And I go, then what does he have? Oh, he has a gentleness problem. And I checked the fruit of the Spirit. I was like, well, yeah, gentleness, one of the fruit of the Spirit. In fact, it's, one of the last fruit of the Spirits. And I was like, okay. And he downloaded a strategy with me, that not to have him do the usual penal type things, write a letter and walk for recess and all this. He
Mm-hmm.
said, get him immediately off the field. Tell him, and we planned that he and I, first with the Lord and then with this kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did the first day, I said to him, we're not going to do what we traditionally do for discipline here. I'm going to pull you off the field. Now, if there's an action, like you bit or punch your cousin or anyone, then we have to kind of take it to the next level as well. But here's what we're going to do. You're going to come off the field and you're going to walk your gentleness And I was like, and you're not going to think about what's going on the field. You're going to think about the gentleness of God. And so I do that the first day. Kid walks off the field like, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to work, Lord. Second week, because it was like strategy implementation next week. I pull him off the field because I see him, he's getting hot under the collar, and he
Yeah.
walks off gentleness, 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 gentleness. And I was like, okay, maybe this will work. Next week, we had school twice that week, but apparently he didn't have any problem the second time. But anyway, I pull him the third week, he's walking off the field, and I'm going, what's going on? I'm feeling, I was like, well, you know the drill by now. And he walks off and gets his gentleness off. That was
Mhm.
the last time he left the field.
Wow.
3 weeks.
Yeah, that's powerful.
3 weeks. After that, I reminded him, I'm a good coach. I'd see moments where he'd pull back in the action, he'd get his gentleness on, he'd go right back at the action.
Mm-hmm.
And I never pulled him again. And so I share that story with a mom, right? So she has a daughter with an anger problem. I
Mm-hmm.
share this just about Christmas time. I'm on her podcast in January. She's so excited. She's like, Claire, you won't believe it. You won't believe it. You won't believe it. And I'm like, I don't know what I don't believe, but tell me. And she's like, my daughter, I've been telling her you don't have an anger problem. You have a gentleness problem for
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks. Today she left for school without giving me any grief.
Wow.
A teenage daughter who's been giving you grief for years goes
Mm-hmm.
off to school, you're celebrating that one. all, all because of a testimony. So I joke, this
Stories
testimony's
are
got legs all over the place.
our stories are powerful, and being able to share those testimonies and what works for other people, there's a lot of power in that, because that allows other people to know, like, there are options, there are things that I can try. And you shared that with her, and she was able to get back to you, Claire, and saying, like, hey, like, this was revolutionary, to me. And I hope that anyone who's listening in, and maybe if they themselves might have struggles with anger, or feel that they do, or know someone that does, they could pass along this testimony to that person as well.
Absolutely. And I've shared it so many times with people to stop medicating the problem, which is what we
Mm,
like to do, and figure
yeah,
out what the identity is that you're missing.
right, right.
Gentleness is a fruit of the spirit, and anger is not. It's a fruit of
Hmm.
the flesh. And so it's like we like to medicate the fruit of fruit of the flesh, but it never is going to change it
Yeah.
without shifting. So, and it's just fun. It becomes fun when you start seeing victory in people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything that you hope listeners take away from hearing about what you've shared today, what would that be?
I think resilience, we didn't learn to walk in one walk encounter. And if we just remember that 80% of the time we're going to be successful, whatever we do, it may not be as successful as it's going to be.
Right.
But if we focus on that 80% that's successful, we'll mediate the 20% that's not
Mm-hmm.
a lot easier because we're
Yeah.
focused in the right place and we're not focused in the wrong place. And most of the time, it's a voice that's just holding us back,
Right.
and identifying who that voice is. I'm presently in this place where my dad passed away about 18 months ago,
Okay.
and
Good to hear.
I dropped something and I heard him say, something, and I was like, wait, that's not the voice of my dad anymore. The voice of my
Mhm.
dad is my cheerleader. And I'm going to change my voice in my head of my dad into the voice of a cheerleader.
Mhm.
Not that I talk to him or anything weird like that, but I'm just like, you have echoes of those voices. You're going to remember the times when he told you he was proud of you.
Mhm.
That's what I'm rewiring myself to remember,
Yeah,
and
that's the
not
hard.
the times when he called me a knucklehead, because I dropped something, or, smooth lose X-lax, whatever it was that you hear in your head when you do stuff like that. And it's, you can rewire it. Takes time, takes discipline, takes imagining a different future, but you can do it. That's
Absolutely.
that's where you begin to go, yeah, I can take a risk. I can do things. I'm okay.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Claire. And on every episode where we have a guest, we have our person who's on leave a question for our listeners and for the next guest to answer. So for you, what would that question be?
Wow. Well, I think it's what are you building resistance in?
Mm,
What are you building resistance in? Because resistance is muscle building. I mean, building buff beliefs, building buff muscles, you only get them with resistance.
yeah.
That's where a hermit in a cave is. They think they're all good until they come out of the cave and they realize there are other people and maybe I'm not as good, right?
Yeah.
Because so what are you building that resistance in?
Thank
And not
you.
bad resistance, like resistance, resilience, you know?
And so it sounds like what things are you like moving through to become better, to
Mm-hmm.
improve, to become stronger?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Resilience might be a better word than resistance, but it's still resisting against them to build muscle.
Right, the
So,
odds. Yeah, you're beating the odds. You're overcoming, rising above. Yeah, for
mm-hmm.
sure. So our previous guest left a question for you, and their question is, do you feel that you were living the life that you wanted when you were a child?
No, because the life I wanted when I was a child didn't feel like it. I honestly couldn't see myself surviving
Mm,
because I have so much anger.
yeah.
So much anger. So, no, I'm grateful I'm not living that life anymore. I'm grateful I live a life where I'm a joy catalytic. And so, yeah, no,
Thank you.
I'm living a much better life.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And I'm so glad to hear that. And what are some ways that folks can get connected to you? Maybe tune into your Facebook Lives that you have and just to be a part of the community that you're creating or have created already.
Yeah, I have a group called Biblical Transformation Facebook group. I can send you the handles if you want.
Yeah, that'd be
And
perfect.
my Thinkific page, cultivating transformation, vt.thinkific.com. It's very long, so I'll send that to you. But yeah, those are the ways to get a hold of me, and I have all kinds of stuff going on. I have some free material. I have some my Facebook group is I have we do have live every Monday at 11 a.m. and it's fun. Like I said, right now I'm doing legacy, and I don't know when this airs, but on the 27th I'm doing a prophetic encounter. So, yeah,
Okay.
of October. So, yeah.
Okay.
Just
Perfect.
fun
Thank you
stuff.
so much. I'll make sure that everything is linked in the show notes so folks can get connected with you. Are there any last words or last pieces that you would like to share with everybody?
I think it's the focus on the 80%. The 80% where you're successful. And your life will be so much better. Sometimes the 20% has stuff you got to deal with. You know, you yell at somebody, you got to apologize. There's most of it, it's stuff nobody's going to remember.
Yeah.
Nobody else is thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves and the
Mhm.
20% that they failed in.
Right. Right.
So if you start thinking about the 80% that you're successful in and deal with, it'll give you energy to deal with the other stuff. When people are digging in mines, they move a lot of dirt, but
Right.
they're not looking for dirt. They're looking for gold or copper
Mhm.
or silver or whatever precious metals in there. And if we live our lives looking for the gold in our lives, looking for the stuff where we're successful, we'll move more dirt, but we'll have a reason to do it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well said. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for coming on to the podcast today and sharing a bit about yourself, your testimony, and the work that you do. I'm really looking forward to what kind of reflections come from folks hearing from your story. And I appreciate your time so much.
Yep. Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in today to another story. Hi, everyone. As you know, this is the reflections piece of the episode. This segment is what I meant to say. But either way, I hope that you enjoyed the testimonies shared by Claire. I won't say full story because I feel like there's so much there that we didn't get a chance to unpack. But I just wanted to highlight a few things that were mentioned that I feel were really powerful. And the first one being that piece about going on the journey of exploration and learning new things and not really putting limitations on yourself based on whether you'll be successful or not. And that really resonated with me. And I honestly, truly heard that quote, recently about being bad so often that it becomes good and your good becomes better and your better becomes the best. And I feel like as someone who generally strives for something to be its best or to be perfect, that's something I'm truly working on myself. Claire mentioned that this is my second podcast and my first one wasn't as good, and I don't know if she had a chance to look at my first podcast, but that's like a big piece in why I stopped doing what I was doing previously. In that show, I was talking about like social issues because I'm a social worker. A lot of my passions really align in that in some kind of way. And I stopped doing it because I'm like, oh, like this isn't like I'm not seeing the outcome that I'm looking for. And I'm not maybe getting out of it what I was hoping for. And when it comes to this podcast and what I'm doing now, so much of it is a lot better from taking the time to be more intentional of the type of space that I'm creating and, also not focusing on the outcome as much. Part of me creating this podcast is one, I really love to hear about other people's stories because it makes me feel like I have a better understanding and ability to expand my capabilities of being empathetic with others and just learning about the complexity of the world that we live in and knowing that there are so many lives being lived in the time that we are all here together. And yeah. So that's just like a really big piece that resonated with me from Claire's story. And then that other piece on being able to be within your grace and know that not everything has to be your strength and really focusing on that 80% in comparison to the 20. I thought that that ending piece was really, really nice. We're like focusing, sifting through the dirt so that you can find the gold, those precious metals, the things that really matter the most so that that's your focus. When we have 100% of our days, 100% of our lives and really putting that 80% to the forefront because it is really hard and intentional work to do. I truly look forward to any comments that are available in response to today's story. As always, please have your conversations on Spotify in the comment section and of course in YouTube there. I will be taking some time to link some of those free guides that Claire mentioned in our reading list in the link. So please make sure to check those out too. So I hope that you all enjoyed. Until next time, and be well. Thanks for joining me at the Listening Well. If you have a story, a secret you've never shared, or a question you'd like advice on, or just something that you would like to share with somebody else, you can send it in anonymously if you wish at the email thelisteningwell25@gmail.com. Every story matters here, and I can't wait to hear yours. Until next time, keep listening and sharing.